Welcome to GovCast, connecting with federal IT's top decision makers. I'm your host, Amy Kluber. Ahead of this Memorial Day weekend, the agency behind management of all the Department of Veterans Affairs national cemeteries, the National Cemetery Administration, is gearing up to pay tribute to veterans and service members both physically and digitally. Acting Undersecretary Ron Walters has been a prominent leader at the agency for quite some time. He tells us about two programs that are making impacts regarding the true meaning of Memorial Day, with a look at both the Veterans Legacy Memorial and the Veterans Legacy Program. Walters also discusses the vast modernization he and the agency has taken in regard to its burial access system and more. Ron, thank you so much for joining us on GovCast. I'm really looking forward to having you on the program.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
You know, you're such a prominent and longstanding leader at VA. I would really like to learn what brought you to the agency and where all that started way back when.
Sure. Well, I hope it was not too far back, but I began working at the VA as a cooperative education student while I was pursuing graduate studies in public administration. I'd always been interested in federal service. My mom, my aunt, and other family members were federal employees. My father and my uncles were World War II veterans, and I saw what military service meant to them. So the importance of public service, I think was instilled in me very early on. The VA gave me an opportunity to serve the country in a different way than my father and uncles did, but with a personal motivation to honor their legacy and continue my family's tradition of federal service. And I think the clarity and the universal support of VA's mission impressed me. It is very focused and mostly bipartisan, and I think that's somewhat of a rarity in policymaking, especially today.
It certainly is. And considering your finance field background, and I know you had a stint at OPM, how have you brought your experiences in those areas to now leading the NCA mission?
Yeah, I spent many years working in VA's central budget office, and being a budget person gives you a seat at the table. I mean, everyone is concerned about resource levels. It was a great way to learn about VA's programs, and I spent a few years reviewing the National Cemetery Administration's portfolio. My time at OPM as the budget and performance lead, I think really helped me to refine these skills and to apply them in a very different context and with entirely different programs and actors. And after being at OPM, I came back to VA as the CFO for the National Cemetery Administration, I think with a much better understanding of how to present and justify funding for our programs and activities in support of our mission.
That's fantastic. And over the years, VA has undergone quite widespread modernization. So I guess the numbers do come handy in that regard. What has that looked like for memorials and NCA in particular?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. One of the key elements of NCA's long-range plan is modernization, and we have pursued this in a variety of ways. I mean, for example, we have applied GIS GPS technology to our cemeteries to enhance gravesite accountability. We use these coordinates to mark and identify caskets and urns when they come into our cemeteries. And we also use them to upload information about the decedents in our system, and that includes gravesite locations. We're also modernizing our internal support systems to streamline our operational processes. We've also begun a new interactive approach to the way we memorialize veterans beyond sort of the traditional headstones and markers through our Veterans Legacy program, and we call it VLP. We use our cemeteries as platforms for public education. We engage local universities and K through 12 schools to learn and share information about veterans buried in our cemeteries. And over 1,000 veteran biographies have been produced through the program so far. Young students who may have never been exposed to the importance of military service may be inspired to pursue a public service career as a result of their participation in the VLP program. Now, most recently, through another program, a companion program called the Veterans Legacy Memorial Program, and we refer to it as VLM, families and the public can post tributes to any of the nearly 4 million veterans that are buried in our cemeteries. It's the first of its kind in the federal government, and it's something that we're very proud of. Each veteran has a dedicated web page, and a recent upgrade to the system now allows for the uploading of photos and documents, biographies, and other similar types of materials. The content is reviewed by NCA moderators to ensure it's appropriate, of course, and honors a veteran's legacy. I think the two programs, VLM and VLP, have been especially critical in modernizing the way we remember our nation's heroes, and the new approach will be especially important in the decades to come as the memorial and stewardship aspects of our mission become even more prominent than they are now.
So, Ron, the cemetery system, it saw so much great expansion under your tenure. What have been some of the most notable initiatives that you helped deliver to veterans?
Well, no one person is responsible for NCA's success. That success is shared by our partners in Congress, veteran service organizations, funeral home directors, and others. And I think most importantly, I am part of a great NCA team, over 75% of whom are veterans. That's the largest percentage in the federal government, by the way. And that team has accomplished a lot on behalf of veterans and their families. I have been fortunate to play a role in a number of key initiatives. For example, I was part of the team that helped NCA achieve 6 times in a row the highest customer satisfaction rating for any public or private organization in the history of the American Customer Satisfaction Index. And that is the only cross-industry measure of customer satisfaction. And starting, I think it was about 10 years ago, I helped to develop new burial access policies that changed the criteria for building new VA national cemeteries. These policies will result in the construction of 18 new cemeteries across the country, including a few of them in highly rural locations. We've opened many of these cemeteries already, and the new cemeteries will serve millions of veterans and their families. I also helped to set the framework to establish a new cemetery apprenticeship program for homeless veterans. These individuals are trained by NCA and guaranteed a caretaker job in one of our cemeteries after they complete the program. 34 veterans have graduated from the program and have been promoted from their original position, and we currently have 21 people in the program. And finally, I was fortunate to have played a role in setting the vision for NCA's future approach to memorialization with the establishment of the VLP and VLM programs that we've already discussed.
When we think about the cemetery system, those are very two notable programs that many people don't really think about as far as what that whole system entails. There is that digital component. So that does lend to a very prominent part of the modernization efforts that are underway at NCA digitally. Those two initiatives, they deliver pretty good services to veterans and their families as far as carrying out NCA's mission of memorialization of veterans interred at cemeteries.
Absolutely. It really is, as I mentioned, an expansion of sort of the traditional ways that we have memorialized veterans through the placement of headstones and grave sites, providing presidential memorial certificates. And all of those activities are still critical to our mission. It's just now, I think we've taken it one step forward with these two programs, VLM and VLP, to modernize the way that family members and others can remember veterans.
Exactly. What have been some of the responses from people who have engaged with these programs? I know VLP, you mentioned, it helps students learn about veterans and maybe getting involved in public service. Has that been a well-received program among those young folks?
Absolutely. The response from the public to, digital programs such as the ones we've talked about has been overwhelmingly positive. It connects families and friends and others in new and innovative ways. It provides information about veterans that might otherwise have never been shared. It allows for virtual memorialization, which greatly assists those who cannot physically visit a gravesite. And to date, we've had over 15,000 tributes posted online, and we've engaged thousands of students, K through 12 students and university students, who have used our cemeteries as part of their educational programs.
That's amazing. Now, considering the time we're in, we're still kind of at that tail end of the pandemic, and it certainly brought many changes for everyone, including VA. How has NCA continued operations over the past year?
Yeah, the pandemic certainly has posed many challenges to NCA, but thanks to the dedication of our field employees, all VA national cemeteries have remained open for visitation, and we have continued burials throughout the pandemic. We did, however, discontinue committal services and funeral honors from March to June of last year in 2020, and we did that in order to ensure the safety of our employees and visitors. Families could still bury their loved ones and were given the opportunity to schedule a memorial service with funeral honors in the future. But during that time period of March to June, we were not allowing for those services during a burial. But in June of 2020, nearly a year ago, we resumed the full range of burial service, but placed limits on the number of people who could attend services depending on local guidelines and cemetery conditions. We also staggered our employees' shifts to minimize the chance of exposure to the virus. We had a similar approach to our administrative support functions. And I'm happy to say that, due to the recently revised CDC guidance, we have removed all limits on committal service sizes. For the fully vaccinated, mask wearing and social distancing is no longer required. But those requirements are, of course, still in effect for those who are not fully vaccinated. We are also allowing for the placement of U.S. flags on grave sites by volunteer groups this year. So we made a lot of progress in being able to relax a lot of the restrictions that we had to do because of the COVID pandemic last year.
Considering the efforts to really get the vaccinations underway, nationwide, how are digital platforms like VLM and VLP, as you talked about earlier, how are they helping people still commemorate Memorial Day this weekend to continue to do that without putting others in danger or putting themselves in danger?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think VLM has given families and friends and the general public kind of a new way to memorialize veterans, and I think the VLM tool has been especially important during the pandemic. For example, last Memorial Day, we suspended traditional large-scale ceremonies at our cemeteries, which often draw hundreds, if not thousands of people. At the same time, we were able to roll out the VLM platform that allowed for the posting of tributes to veterans on their individual that I mentioned previously. The response was overwhelming, and it helped to alleviate some of the understandable disappointment of the cemetery cancellations. Now, this year, we have added some new features to VLM that will allow for the uploading of pictures and documents and letters and other materials related to the veteran. It will also allow a user to be alerted if new material has been posted on a veteran's site. And I think the pandemic, in general, has highlighted the importance of virtual approaches to the delivery of services and benefits. And VLM will allow the public to continue to honor veterans in new ways. It really is the future of memorialization.
That's fantastic and such well-timed for considering the importance of this weekend.
Very much so.
Considering your time at VA, and when you look back at all these efforts and initiatives that you've been a part of, what lasting impacts do you hope to have at NCA and VA overall?
Well, NCA has always been an extremely successful organization thanks to the dedication of our team members. I mean, in terms of my impact, I hope that I have challenged the organization to be even better with an eye toward the future and where we should not only be next year, but in the next 20 or 30 years, especially making sure that we remember veterans' legacies and ensure burial access. Many of the specific initiatives that I have been involved with will hopefully have a positive impact long after I have left the organization. And I hope to leave NCA and, in a broader sense, the VA better for my involvement.
And considering this weekend and everything everyone's going to be doing to commemorate those interred at national cemeteries, how would you advise your family and friends and the public and maybe internal to VA? How would you advise them to spend these next few days in remembrance of those who served?
Well, at no place is the price of freedom more visible than a national cemetery, especially on Memorial Day. And thankfully, the nation is on a path to recovery from COVID. I would invite everyone to visit a VA cemetery where you may place flowers or individual flags on a veteran's gravesite to honor their service. I would also ask that you pause for a moment to reflect and to say thank you. And please visit the VLM website at va.gov/remember to post a tribute to our nation's heroes.
Ron, thanks so much for, sharing these perspectives and helping us keep in mind what this holiday coming up truly means.
Amy, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to tell you and your listeners some great things that NCA and the VA are involved with. So again, thank you very much for the invitation.
If you can't attend any in-person Memorial Day commemoration events, head to va.gov/remember to browse and learn about a veteran and his or her remarkable life. GovCast is a production of Government CIO Media and Research. For more podcasts, head to our website. And please, if you liked what you heard, let us know by leaving us a review in iTunes. We continue to strive to help you connect with federal IT's top decision makers. Thanks for listening.